Hello, hello. Welcome back to another Recaps with Giros. It's going to be a shorter episode because if you've been following the channel, I just finished the October horror bracket, which took a lot out of me, honestly. Yeah, it was a lot. And I honestly haven't really wanted to watch a movie since then, since the last week when we finished. But there were a couple movies throughout October that I ended up watching that weren't a part of the bracket. I just wanted to watch them. And I figured today would be a good time just to kind of touch on those because they were both pretty big movies that both of them are, I guess, what am I trying to say here? Neither of them felt like super mainstream in terms of the anticipation for them. Like, I feel like most audiences didn't really even know these were coming out or know anything about them. Um, Sci-fi nerds definitely have been looking forward to Dune for a very long time, including myself, for years. I mean, literally for years, I've been looking forward to Dune. I'm going to talk about the French Dispatch first, and then I'll get into Dune. The French Dispatch was it's a Wes Anderson movie. Wes Anderson's done some pretty great stuff. Um, I guess he's kind of a mixed bag in my book. Going into this movie, I expected um, more, I would say. But then when I go and look at kind of his work as a whole, I realize that I either haven't seen a lot of it or I'm not a fan of a lot of it. Like, I've never seen Bottle Rocket. I've never seen the Darjeeling Limited. I've never seen Rushmore or The Life Aquatic. So there's a lot of stuff here that I actually haven't seen. Um, I've seen Moonrise Kingdom and I didn't really care for it. I've seen Fantastic Mr. Fox, but it has been probably 8 years and I don't really remember it. So I could hardly even count myself as seeing it. Isle of Dogs I've seen. I thought was okay. Again, it didn't really do much for me. I thought it floundered a bit. I gave it an 8. It probably doesn't even deserve that. I'm just gonna bump it to a 7 while I'm here. Royal Tenenbaums loved this movie. Um, Solid 9 out of 10. Like, just fantastic. It's such a weird movie with great characters, and I feel like every actor is really given something to do. Um, and I'm touching on all this because Wes Anderson's work, especially in the last few years, is very comparable to each other. He's got this super stylized way of making a movie now, and the way that his characters talk. It's almost like if you took a Yorgos script and you added like hipster style all over it. Um, and the reason I that's probably not even a great comparison. What I'm trying to say is that Wes Anderson writes his characters in a way where they just say exactly what they're thinking in such an efficient way with little to no emotion. They're quickly just talking exactly how they feel. And in this movie, it shines a lot in the Royal Tenenbaums because it's about a family and drama, and it deals with very serious uncomfortable issues, but seeing it through the lens of this quirky, well acted script where everyone is just being super direct, it's super enjoyable and fun all the way through. So I love that movie. And then The Grand Budapest Hotel is like one of my favorite movies. I saw it a couple of years ago and I really enjoyed it. I gave it like a soft 8 out of 10. And then, oh, hey, Jimmy, welcome. And then when I rewatched The Grand Budapest Hotel, like a couple months ago with Natalie, she had never seen it. When I rewatched it, I fell in love with it. I think it's just such a fantastic movie, and I think it highlights his style in the best way without compromising a great story. And this movie is, if you liked The French Dispatch, go watch Grand Budapest because I really think it's just such a better showcase of that ultra stylized cinematography that he tries to do in the French Dispatch. Um, so yeah, like I said, Grand Budapest and Tenenbaums, these are both 9 out of 10 movies for me. So going into the French Dispatch, I was excited. Um, However, The French Dispatch suffers mostly from the fact that it's an anthology film. And walking out of this movie, it made me realize that I don't love most anthologies. I think it's an inherently flawed form of a movie. That's not to say it can't be done, um, but off the top of my head, I can't think of a single anthology that I loved front to back, right? There's usually always like one or two stories that bring the whole movie down a bit. And it makes it really, really difficult to judge a movie in that way because, and it sparked an interesting conversation with my friend Ronnie where I think we all subconsciously average a movie out in our head, right? You watch a couple great scenes, you watch a couple bad scenes, and you rate the movie as an average. I think this is the natural way we all do this. However, some people are much more forgiving of the bad, and and some people just put more weight into the great stuff. I was talking to Ronnie, and he was saying how um, if a movie has really really great moments, just a few great moments, it brings the whole movie up quite a bit for him. And that's interesting. For me, it's hard for me to just ignore the bad stuff though. And like I said, I think all of the criticisms I have for this movie could be attributed to the fact that it's an anthology. Not just in the sense that some of the stories are worse than others, but in the sense that the way that character development pans out, the over exposition, the lack of a real narrative theme, these three things are directly a result of the anthology structure. And so, like I said, it's tough because I think if you pull out one or two of these stories, you end up with a movie that's really special. Um, but even those stories are hindered by the fact that they don't get a feature length runtime to really flesh them out. And I'm talking in generalities here because I don't want to spoil the movie for those that haven't seen it. Um, so I'll say a couple more things before I talk spoilers. Timothy Chalamet is in this movie. He's very hot right now. Um, on the day that this was released was also the same day that Dune was released, and he's the star of Dune. He's not the star of this movie, but he's one of the primary characters of one of the stories. And I honestly didn't think he was incredible in this movie. I've come to realize that he's a serviceable actor with phenomenal vibes and phenomenal aesthetics. If you put him in the right role, simply his stature and his look carry a lot for him. But every time he actually delivers dialogue, I'm constantly wondering if I actually like him as an actor or if I just like looking at him. Um, I liked him more in Dune than I liked him in this, but there are some moments towards the end of his story where he's placed in very dramatic, beautifully composed scenes where he's not saying anything, he's just a part of it. And he fits so perfectly. And I struggle to think of another actor that would have fit so well into those aesthetics. So he's a bit of a mixed bag. I think, like I said, he's perfectly serviceable. And I do think that if he's given the right roles and the right direction, I think he'll grow a lot. He's a young guy. I could see him developing into a really great actor one day. He kind of gives me Ryan Gosling vibes, except I think Ryan Gosling's a stronger actor at this point, but just in that sort of like moody, pretty boy aesthetic. Um, I see some similarities there for whatever reason. Benicio del Toro's story is definitely the best in my opinion. Him and Adrian Brody kind of play off each other. That's a great story in this. It's interesting. I mean, it's tough because I said and I wonder if if this was a series, if this was like a short limited run series on Netflix where they were split into different parts, I almost wonder if I'd look at it more favorably. But yeah, so what did I not like about this movie? Anyone that has seen a movie from Wes Anderson knows that he loves to shoot lots of exposition at you um through just dialogue. And the classic creative writing standard of show don't tell, he breaks that rule quite a lot. He'll show vibes, he'll show aesthetics, he'll put you in the world. But um, typically at the beginning of his movies, especially like in the first act, he will basically be reading a book to his audience. The main character will be speaking to the audience and saying, "This is what happened with these people, and this is how these people reacted, and then this happened, and it's funny and witty, and it's very quick. It's delivered very very fast, and it's a lot. It's an exposition dump, and it's not necessarily a bad thing for most of his work, because like I said, he is fluffing it out with such great aesthetics. But in a in an anthology film where every 30-40 minutes the story is restarting and you're going into a new story, it gets exhausting, because he ends up having those exposition dumps much more frequently in this movie. And right as you're settling into a story, he ends the story and then a new one starts, and you have to be like, okay, time to like turn my ears back onto ultra mode so I can hear every line of dialogue he's shooting at me. And like it's a bit exhausting. It is. And it's a shame that certain characters such as Owen Wilson are given nothing to do other than be the exposition dumper for a scene or two. He definitely underutilizes some of those actors. Um, Additionally, this movie I think is a great example of every director hits this point where when they become like ultra famous and are just when a director's given a blank check from the studio, they almost become a caricature of themselves. And I don't hate that because I do firmly believe that the best art and the worst art are are just a hairline apart from each other. I do think you have to really commit to your art if you want to make something fantastic and risk making something terrible. I don't think this is terrible by any means, but if you look at Christopher Nolan, he makes great movies and he gets popular and popular, and then he's given a blank check and he makes Tenet, which Tenet is a great movie, but its biggest strengths and its biggest weakness are the fact that it's directed and created by Christopher Nolan. It highlights the worst aspects of him, which are shoddy, show don't tell stuff, and you know overly complicated sci-fi. Um, Tarantino, I would say Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is the same thing, where it's it's the most Tarantino movie, but that also highlights some of his flaws and his meandering as well. And so, and his foot fetish, right? Like this movie is the perfect example of that for Wes Anderson, where Wes Anderson is obsessed with these super tightly composed shots that are basically just saying, look at me, look how great of a cinematographer I am, look how picture perfect this scene looks, and how great my set design is, and the movement and the symmetry. And there are many sequences in this movie that just feel like a tech demo for Wes Anderson. It feels like it feels like a collection of really pretty moments that he spent hundreds of thousands of dollars crafting. and they're very pretty and they're very interesting, and I love that someone is making that art. I just don't know if it's super effective as a movie. Um, and I again, I wonder if they would have been more effective in a movie that wasn't an anthology. I don't know if it would have mattered, but yeah, it- self-indulgent at times, a little too self-indulgent. I'd give this movie a hard 7 out of 10, I guess. I think I'd want to see it again. There are some sequences in this movie that are like 10 out of 10. The endings to all of them are pretty satisfying, which is pretty important, especially for an anthology. You kind of remember the ending the most. Definitely go see it. I thought the prison story with Del Toro was the best one. I struggle to remember the details of the Timothy Chalamet, and I literally can't remember the other stories. So, the movie ended. It was what I saw this in the theater, and I just kept rubber banding between, wow, that was such a well done scene, very fun, and I'm kind of bored, and this isn't as effective as he thinks it is, and kind of just feels like an amateur story laid on top of gorgeous cinematography and solid acting. I don't think the script was there. That's where most of my complaints come. It's the script, it's the character development, it's the narrative themes. It's much more style over substance. So if you are obsessed with his style, I think you'll like it a lot, but overall, not incredible. Go see it though. Why not, right? All right. Next up, the real movie, the one I care about, Dune. I literally waited years to watch Dune. It it was on my radar for a very long time. Denis Villeneuve, the director, is one of my favorite directors of all time, top three at least. As time goes on, he solidifies himself more and more as my favorite director, or one of them. Sicario, Prisoners, Blade Runner, Arrival, Enemy, all bangers. He's the best suspense director I've ever seen. His scripts are incredible. I don't even think he writes all of them, but or I don't know if he writes any of them. I just know that he makes hits. Like seriously, I love this man. Blade Runner 2049 is kind of the precursor to Dune. If you like this movie, you will like Dune. I thought Blade Runner 2049 was better than the first movie. I thought that it was visually stunning. I thought that the runtime, even though it was long, was well warranted. It's just so atmospherically incredible. It throws you into these scenes and you believe every second of them. And so when Dune was announced, based on this incredible book, and all of these actors were announced that I'm a fan of, Oscar Isaac, Benicio del Toro, oh no, sorry, not Benicio del Toro, Javier Bardem, sorry, Josh Brolin, Timothy Chalamet, Zendaya, um, the woman that played the mother, Rebecca Ferguson. I didn't know who she was going into this, but she was incredible. Um, yeah, so suffice to say, I was extremely hyped. Um, it basically all the same creators from Dune. You had the same cinematographers, the same director, the same composer, the same uh, everything. I mean, most of the people that were on Blade Runner came over to this, so I knew it was going to be a banger. In preparation for it, I read the first like 30 pages of Dune. It's a notoriously complicated book. People kind of know to steer clear of it because it's so overly complex. It comes with a glossary. Um, I don't know if that's the right word, glossary, but basically, it's one of those books where it just plops you into the middle of a universe, and it doesn't spend time explaining any of the terminology, and it expects you to to flip to the back of the book and learn about the terms either as they come up or before you even read the book. So they'll be like the battle of whatever happened and blah blah. They'll just drop that into a paragraph, and you can try your best to figure out the paragraph with context clues. But in reality, to really even know what the hell they're talking about, you got to flip to the back of the book and read about this battle and figure out what happened. And it's an exhausting way to write a book. It's also the most effective way to build a universe. So I read the first 30 pages. I didn't bother with the glossary because I knew I would never get through the book if I tried to do that. And I liked it a lot, the book. I just kind of put it down for no real reason. But welcome, Sam. Yeah, you should see this movie. But I liked the book a lot. I knew I was going to see the movie regardless. The movie does a much better job of exposing you to the world and teaching you the different factions and the different planets. It does a much better job of teaching you the world in the middle of the story as a movie should. So it's much more accessible in that way. I do wonder if I went back and I tried to finish the book or keep reading it. I wonder if it'd be easier for me almost to read the book after seeing the movie, and I want to because for those that don't know, this movie is going to be a two-parter. And the biggest criticism of the movie is the fact that it kind of just ends at an arbitrary place. So, like, 2 hours into the movie, the climax happens, and that's where a movie would typically end. Except this movie tacks on another 45 minutes to kind of like get you to the next movie, basically. And listen, I give this movie a 9 out of 10. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Um, Seeing it in theaters, I think, really enhanced it. If you can't see it in theaters, please watch it on the biggest TV that you have. The This movie accomplishes a sense of scale that I've never really seen besides maybe in a Star Wars movie. Just the scale of the planets and the spaceships, and it's hard to describe, but between the sound design, which is 10 out of 10, and the cinematography that's 10 out of 10, it's crazy to see just how expansive and huge everything is, and it adds a lot, especially when scary things happen, because there are creepy moments in this with the villains, and or when something violent happens, with warships. You feel it, and for a movie to allow you to feel something in such a crazy, outlandishly different universe, it's a testament. And like I said, the acting all around is superb. The writing is there, obviously, because it's like one of the most popular sci-fi books of all time. So that's a no-brainer. Um, and it's just cool, dude. I mean, there's an element, I won't spoil anything, but basically the main character and his mother have this ability called the voice, um, where he can tap into this like special voice that allows him to like Jedi mind trick people. And there are some comparisons you can draw between this and Star Wars. There's some shots in this movie that I felt are very similar to those in the new Star Wars films. Like there's a shot of like a turret gunner shooting off and like the dust shaking off of it as it does, and it's taken like straight out of The Force Awakens. Um, but yeah, between like the magical space wizard stuff and just the fact that it's like these different planets and it's a sci-fi, this feels like the adult real version of Star Wars. Star Wars movies are kids movies at their core, which is why they can never truly embody what their fan base wants them to be. Um, this movie is made for adults. Kids would get bored in this. There's a lot of dialogue. There's a lot of slow scenes and establishing shots, and all these different factions, and there's a little bit of political drama, but it's not overly complicated. I do think that if you just watch the movie and you listen, it's easy to understand. There are some more simple explanation scenes that aren't in the book where a character kind of does the obligatory like, listen, son, like this is what's happening and this is why it's important for us. They'll more explicitly say it. But the basic plot line is that this family, the Atreides family, are called upon by the Emperor to take control of Arrakis, the desert planet. Um, there's a different family that controlled it for many many years, and it's being passed down willingly to the Atreides family. And this planet sucks. Water is very hard to come by, but the reason that it's important is because it has the spice element. And spice is the ingredient that allows for interdimensional travel or intergalactic travel, and it's the most valuable uh, material in the entire universe. The family before the Atreides family that controlled this planet was more wealthy and arguably more powerful than the Emperor himself. And so there's all these mysterious questions and political questions of like, why would the Emperor do this? Do you really think the previous family is just going to let that go? Um, and I do think, if I could say something, I wish the movie number one was R-rated so that the deaths were more gory, or a little bit more than just a stabbing. But that being said, it's still violent. And I do kind of wish there was more politics in it. I don't. I think it's a pretty straightforward story, and I do think that the book, in particular, kind of talks about the different actors at play a little bit more. Um, I I don't know. Like I said, I think it's a fantastic movie. I think maybe they shied away from some of the super complex political drama in order to make it a little bit more accessible. And maybe they're just setting more stuff up so that the sequel can kind of pay off more of that. Um, but yeah, fantastic movie. I don't want to spoil it for anyone out there, but um, if you like these actors, if you like the director, if you like sci-fi, period, you're gonna like this movie. There's not a ton of really ultra stylized, expansive, well-made, unlimited funded sci-fi movies. This is a dying genre, and um, it needs your support if you like sci-fi, and it's incredible. I mean, just eye candy alone, it's incredible. So definitely go see Dune. Highly recommend it. Some of my friends didn't like it as much as me, but what do they know? Okay, well, that's all I have for today. I know it was a pretty low key episode. I know that my vibe is a little off and I'm having trouble articulating, but it's just been a long couple weeks, outside of the podcast as well. I'm just not 100% there, but I still wanted to make this recap and talk about those movies because I love them so much, or at least I love Dune so much. Maybe I'll develop a full podcast for Dune because maybe when the second part drops, I could do like a full deep dive. The sequel is 2 years out, so look forward to that. Thank you for joining me. I truly appreciate it, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.